just do it for Miami Dolphins. The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle, the Dolphins touchdown. Throwing deep upfield on the near side, man open, touchdown! Looking deep, he's got a man, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown! Tagovailoa trying to break up for it, fire to the end zone. Touchdown! Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. 1, 2, 3, hit! Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back for another one. I didn't even ask you before we went live, Neal. I don't know if you guys can hear it in my voice, but your boy is under the weather right now. And we welcome you back to another episode of Fin Too Deep. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to have some draft talk. We're going to talk about some Tua. We're going to talk some Ogbah. We're going to talk some Bobby Wagner because we know everyone want to hear our thoughts on that. Neal's going to give his thoughts on Fangio and, well, Fangio's latest hire, because you guys haven't heard his thoughts on that yet. So we got a lot to go over tonight. And we're also going to talk about something that I think needs to be talked about. You know, what should be the first priority in free agent in terms of upgrading a unit. So we'll talk about all that stuff tonight. Neal, besides all of that, man, before we get into it all, how are you doing right now? How are you feeling, man? Because I don't know about you, but I've been saying it on my show, and man, it's a good time to be a Dolphin as we watch a coach put together quietly one of the best staffs in the NFL. When you look across the pond, and you said it before I went live, they might have gotten Sean Payton, but you got a team like Denver with all those pieces. They're having yet another bad offseason, and we continue building in the right direction. How you feeling, Neal?
I think the Miami Dolphins are becoming a destination, which is something we've seen with players. The Tyreek Hill move, obviously, Terron Armstead coming here on a contract, I think, way less than we all anticipated. And, maybe you're not paying for 17 games, but, he was way under market value. You land Vic Fangio. So for players and coaches, this Dolphin franchise is becoming a destination. And, you'll see people say that it's South Beach, it's Miami, no state tax. It's always been that. And people didn't want to come here as much before. I mean, you're starting to see it, I'm not going to talk a lot about Caleb Williams saying that he wants to be here, but when you have the best player in college football saying that the number one place he'd want to go is Miami, that says a lot about the culture, the coach, what Mike McDaniel's building here. I think for people to go on Twitter and argue, what can we do to get him? I mean, I said this yesterday. The Dolphins are going to be closer to pick 32 than they are to pick 1, and Caleb Williams is going number 1 overall. So it's not even the discussion. And we have a quarterback. So we won't
even have a shot to get Drake May.
Right. And I'm not even worried about I'll be honest. I'm not even scouting quarterbacks in the draft. I'm not even.
Well, that's my thing, Neal. And I said this yesterday when I went, and I want to get your thoughts on this because you're kind of alluding to it. So let me just open the floodgates for you. What I said yesterday was all these people making it about getting Caleb Williams. And I mean, me and you on our show and me on Phinside the NFL, I've been saying, listen, if two don't work out, this isn't the year to draft a quarterback. It's next year with Caleb Williams and Drake May. We've been talking about these kids for quite some time. And my whole thing is I'm looking at a lot of these people, bro. A lot of these people ain't watched anything more than YouTube highlights after they saw that he was interested in Miami. And why are all these people leaving out Neal, that he also said he'd want to go to San Fran, Las Vegas, and Atlanta as well. And when you add us to the list, looks like Atlanta's going to be the closest 1-1 instead of us. But, you alluded to it, so let's just blow the gates off of it. Dude, while people are sitting here worried about switching the quarterback, me and you, we know they're moving forward with Tua. That's not the takeaway from the story, Neal. Am I wrong in saying that the real takeaway from the Caleb Williams story is players who aren't even in the league want to come here? What do you think that players in the league want to do? You look at Darrell Bevel turning down promotions. You look at defensive coordinator Ronaldo Hill taking a demotion to come here. It's the opposite, brother. Like, don't look at we're going to get Caleb Williams. Look at it as, wow, we are becoming that destination again, Neal, and it's been a long time.
Well, it doesn't. I haven't seen a list that's come out that doesn't have Tua Tagovailoa as a top 10 quarterback, and these are for people that are paid professionals. It doesn't mean their opinion's any better than anyone who watches tape. I just think it's unbelievable that you have a bona fide top 10 quarterback and you spend majority of the offseason talking about how to replace them. And we went through it last offseason on Twitter. I'm not doing it this year because I know Tua is going to be the starter. I think he deserves that 5th-year tag. At the end of the day, we had all these mysterious big-name quarterbacks that were supposed to be on the moves, right? Aaron Rodgers, now it's rumored he might stay in Green Bay. Lamar Jackson's going to get held hostage by the franchise tag. Derek Carr, a guy who I believe is not even on the same playing field as a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, is going to probably get in a bidding war between the Saints and the Jets, right? Like, who's going to be this great quarterback that's going to be available? Is it going to be Ryan Tannehill? Ryan Tannehill never had the season.
I think he's going to be a Jet, Neal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just funny. It's like everyone's always worried about replacing someone instead of embracing someone, right? And the way I look at it is that Tua answered every question about his play on the field this year. Now he's just got to shut up everyone about the availability. And he's taking measures to do that, right? And, I don't know anything about jiu-jitsu. I got to be a brown belt at Kim's Karate when I was young, and that's all I know. But, I think it's awesome that Tua's taking that initiative to take
We'll get into that. Yeah, we'll get in. We'll dive into that because that's one of the things I want to talk about when we get into that situation is how seriously he's taking it.
Yeah, but he deserves credit for all the work he does to get better. Like
every offseason, he works to get better.
Right. Like, there's no question about Tua's work ethic. Oh, I see Alf's point.
Alf said one guy started talking about tanking on Twitter. You can guess who. Well, I can guess who, and I'm going to say this. Whoever saying that, not even in the same comparison, because I saw it. Well, everyone said tank for Tua. What about tanking for compare rosters in 2019 to the roster in 2023. Brother, you could go put Jay Fiedler back there. You're going to the playoffs, okay? Like, I don't know what people are thinking about here. So, this roster is not a tankable roster. So that whole scenario being put on was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And, some people, they continue to stupefy me by finding new ways and new levels of idiocy. And I applaud them for it.
Was he the guy that cheers for that elite quarterback in Philadelphia that fumbled a ball that led to a score and lost the team to the Super Bowl? Is that who? Am I right on the path thinking there?
Well, I think it's the person who also called Josh Rosen a franchise quarterback at one point when he was here. So, that tells you all you need to know about that person's opinion on the position. So let's start all of this off. The first thing I wanted to start off with is Tua and all of this judo news, because there is a new level that's come out, and we'll just pull it up here. So who he's working with here, if you go, and we'll pull up the Pro Football Talk right here. So in late December, after Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa suffered his most recent concussion due to his helmet striking the ground, former U.S. Olympic judoka Jason Morris contacted us via email with a simple suggestion for Tua: try judo. So you got an Olympic judo master, basically saying what we were saying on this show, what we were saying on multiple, different panels, that you got to learn how to fall. There's an art to learning how to fall. And it's crazy because some people were mocking him and, mocking the whole learning how to fall. Oh, people don't know how to learn how to fall. Da 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 da. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it because, I mean, you got literally one of the best, judo masters alive in the U.S. saying, brother, judo. And I had people in my comments, jujitsu. I've said multiple times, you send the guy to a skate park for 6-8 hours in a day. All those people, they don't wear helmets, they don't wear protective gear because they've mastered the art of falling. Skateboarding, I know, right? Why do you that's just what it is. So what are you, like, you think Tony Hawk hasn't mastered the art form of falling, of all the stuff he's done? Just saying. So what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I think it's awesome that the Dolphins, in collaboration, identified something that they need to work on and what it tells me is that they know they have the quarterback. They want to make sure he's on the field every Sunday. And they probably took a look at some of those falls and said, like, damn, like, this shouldn't be happening. We have to understand how to help you fall. And I've told you this offline. I think one of the reasons he falls awkward is that he is accounting for, his hip. He had a humongous injury in college. I think he wants to be careful about landing on that hip, personally. And again, you see Neal Driscoll, the bomb scream. You do not see a PhD. I am not a doctor. I might have a doctor's writing, but that is about it. I think it's awesome that they're doing this, though, and it just shows to his dedication to his craft. I, for one, was worried that we might see breaking news. Tua Tagovailoa has retired from football, but instead, the guy's already trying to find a way to get better, right? The season just ended. We haven't even had free agency on the draft, but yet Tua Tagovailoa is already working. Like, we saw the biggest leap in the NFL last year from what was he, the 28th ranked quarterback from the 22nd all the way up to 4th or something last year. Like, if he continues that ethic and driving to, that's the desire to be great, and he continues to take leaps like this, he's going to put himself. I mean, look, Las Vegas thinks he's an MVP candidate again, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't just put that kind of stuff on people. There's a lot of money at stake.
Doesn't he have the fifth best odds? I think him and who's he tied with? Hurts, right? Him and Hurts are tied with the fifth best odds, I think.
And what does that say, right?
Well, look, he went from, dude, last year he was plus 7,000. Now he's plus 1,200, Neal.
I mean, look, like I've said this on here, Tua Tagovailoa is my favorite player in the NFL. I view having him as our quarterback as a strength and answer to the position that we haven't had in a long time. I'm not going to act like I didn't have interest in Deshaun Watson, because I did. And, I'm not going to act like I'm, this guy that, hasn't had, questions about Tua. But what he did this year from the year before, to me, answered a lot of those questions. I believe if he plays against Buffalo, we win a playoff game, and who knows what happens after that. So that's where, and I think this football team is going to be way better coming up season, because I think a lot of the flaws on defense were bad situational defensive play calling. And I think Vic Fangio, you look at that presser that he had, and I don't know how you can't be excited. He's practically saying, I'm not even going to watch tape of the players that are here, because I know that coach that was in here before was awful and didn't know what he's doing. I'll make my judgments for what I see on them. I don't need to wait to see what they did somewhere else. So I think, give kudos to Tua for trying to get better already. The cool thing that I see, and I think one of the most important ingredients of any football team, is that his teammates believe in him and have his back, right? I saw Jalen Waddle. I saw all these guys going right
Jerome
to
Baker. Jerome Baker.
Yeah, going right to bat for him. That is everything on the football field, and I, again, if you've listened to us, I live in Baltimore. Sammy Watkins was publicly calling out Lamar Jackson for not playing in the playoff game, publicly calling him out, saying, like, if he had a contract, he'd be playing. The Ravens are probably one of the top football front offices or franchises in this league, and they're having leaks like that. It wouldn't be surprising if there was players that said, I have availability questions with Tua, but you don't hear that from Dolphins players. You hear the opposite. Like, that's our guy. When he's on the field, he gives us the best chance to win. I'm on that line of thinking. And, the question I always might ask myself is Can you win a Super Bowl with this guy? And
Yes.
to me, the answer is yes with Tua Tagovailoa.
Joe says, reason, even in the Marines, they teach you how to fall and roll properly. People are uneducated. See, that's the problem, man. That's the problem. People are uneducated due to them listening and being naive enough to follow the uninformed, right? You got the blind leading the blind, and it's terrible for this fan base, and it's one of the biggest dividing factors in this fan base. So, that's why you got people like me, Neal, Dolphin fan, Richmond Webb, ball game. We're out here basically countering the misinformation, right? We spend times in our shows having to counter misinformation. I'm sure the 3 yard per carry guys, I mean, we see Alf and Chris do it all the time too on Twitter, right? So, you have to
police the nonsense sometimes, and it's unfortunate. I think that one of the best parts about when the Dolphins were winning this year, was how the Twitter Dolphins community was coming together, right? And I think it's really enjoyable.
Were they, or did all those idiots just crawl back under their rock?
Yeah, well, fair point. But I live here in Baltimore. The Orioles don't give us much to cheer about. But
they will soon.
Yeah, when they were winning playoff games in 2012, 2013, man, you go to the stadium, you're like hugging people you don't know, jumping beers on each other's heads. Like, I mean, dude, that's a blast to me. And like, one of the things is, how fun is it going to be when you're at a Super Bowl and the Dolphins are holding a Lombardi trophy and there's, people brawling in the parking lot? Like, what are we doing? Like, I just think there's a mission, there's a ghost hunt, a witch hunter is what they call it, I guess, against Tua for some reason. And I think it's unfair. But, I think that the beauty of Twitter is there's a mute button and a block button. The beauty of a lot of this content is you don't have to listen to it if you don't like it. And I don't think that you have to have all sunshines and rainbows. I think you can be critical, and that's fair. But I also think there's a part of being critical where it's way too much, and it's just too much, man. We could talk about it all.
You gotta know the difference between critiquing a player and being so critical you start making it personal with the player. That's right. You gotta know that line, right?
It's an obsession. It's an obsession.
Well, you know what I said? I said this multiple times on the show, Neal. You let me know what you think about this. Between all these spaces and all these YouTube panels, they call us the Tuaneers because we believe in them, but they're the ones that spend 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of their day talking about the kid, not us. So who's really the Tuaneer?
That what you just said is a really good point. And all those spaces are very welcoming to me. They're very nice to me. They they offer me a forum to go up and talk. But there is some people that spend 10 hours a day just crushing Tua Tagovailoa. And I'm like, man, I don't have any interest in anybody to talk about it for 10 hours a day, man. Like, it's just kind of a weird.
Well, and they keep it up. They keep it up when we're hiring a new staff, when we hire Fangio, when the new defenses should be the talking point, and the nuances and how we're gonna attack offenses with this. But because we're dealing with a bunch of casuals, right? Think about it. Quarterback is the lowest hanging fruit because it's the one position you watch the most when you actually turn on the TV.
Yeah, you know what? The reason I even take a step further, I think there's one elite quarterback in football. I think the term elite is thrown out. Yeah, Mahomes. I think the word elite and like Hall of Fame and all that is so thrown out, and so like the standard is so much different than what I remember 20 years ago. Yeah, I think Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in football right now.
I agree with that.
But I don't know if he's elite. Like what make he's a good football player. He has good stats. But like kind of what Trent Dilfer said in that Bullies of Baltimore documentary, modern day NFL is meant to bloat your stats. They want scoring. They want high passing. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these guys are going to have more passing yards than Dan Marino, but none of them are better quarterbacks than Dan Marino, right? You know what I mean? Like that's
yeah.
I mean, Pat Mahomes is a special football player. I think he is.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like what you just said. I just got to stop you there because you made the keyest point right there. If we talk about ability to throw the football, who are we taking? Dan Marino or Tom Brady? You're taking Dan Marino. But because of what you just labeled, Tom Brady's the GOAT nowadays. So, bro, that's why we've talked about this, right? Dan Marino will throw for 6,000 yards in the new NFL. Easily. No problem. No problem. That guy would flirt with 60,000 and 40 would be the minimum. 35, 40 would be the minimum he'd throw touchdown-wise.
In his sleep, he would, dude. I mean,
like
that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone's elite. Everyone's like, there's so many people who dub elite that, like, the word has lost its meaning. You know what I mean? It's like the only guy that I see. Yeah, because, like, look, you could say it about every single person. And the thing that surprised me and really made me buy into Pat Mahomes this year, like, people are going to say Juju Smith's a good receiver. He's okay. I think his receiving core was very mediocre, and he elevated them. And Travis Kelce.
Say the word. Say my word. Say it.
What's your word?
He won on efficiency this year, and that was what was so impressive.
Right.
Was he's shown you he can win with the big arm and the big throws and the explosive plays. But this year he showed he's grown to where he can beat you with efficiency. Not even 200 yards, but he threw 3 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over, and was careful with the football, and they won.
Right. Yeah. I think that it's one of those things. Things are, I want my quarterback to give me a chance to win every Sunday. I want him to be a good football player. Sure, the accolades, the stats, all that's fun. But at the end of the day, look, Troy Aikman won 3 Super Bowls, and you look at his stats, and Troy Aikman never did anything. You know what I mean? Like
W's though. W's got him in the Hall of Fame, not win.
Exactly.
It's funny. People don't want to see. This is what I've always said, because we're going down a rabbit hole, and I love that we're having this conversation in front of everyone, because everyone's seeing how we naturally talk right now. But now you go down the rabbit hole of people say wins aren't a quarterback stat, but I say, okay, and I agree with that to an extent. My caveat is wins aren't a quarterback stat early on, but they eventually do become a quarterback stat. They become a coaching stat and a quarterback stat after 4 or 5 years. You're damn right. That's why this year everyone was talking about what with Herbert? Not about not making the playoffs, but can't get to 500, can't stay above 500. Notice everyone started that talk this year, right? Like, because eventually, as much as people early on don't want to say, well, wins aren't a quarterback stat, eventually even those people start using, right? We saw ESPN and all these people started using it as a quarterback stat. It eventually turns into it, bro.
Everything's not, black and white. There's something in the middle. Like QB wins, like everyone sometimes sure, your quarterback contributes to the win. It's not all on them, but it's ironic how the best quarterbacks are the ones that win a lot, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like what you see. So I think it's one of those things that at the end of the day, Tua Tagovailoa is a winner, man. That guy's that's all he's done since we first saw his name on a TV screen. He's won, and has everyone been asleep for the last 23 years? The musical chairs at quarterback, the failures we've had.
That's why I wonder how 2 things, Neal. How long have these people been fans for, and how deep does their fandom run? Because I know me and you, I know we were in different states, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to assume you were. So I'm going to say I know me and you had some tears rolling down when we watched what happened to Dan Marino, and we've been living in the hell ever since that Jacksonville Jaguars game. And anyone who watched Dan Marino's career and watched him go out that way, we have been waiting for the type of production we saw this year. And listen, me and you are 2 huge Dan Marino fans, but me and you can also admit Tua did something this year in that 3-game streak, right? Where he was doing things Dan Marino never did in our colors. And don't act like Dan Marino never had 3 or 4 games in a row where there were weaker opponents. And even still, were they weaker opponents? Because on that 3-game streak, the Bears were the top 5 passing defense when we faced them. And I say the Lions were very underrated. Look what they did to the Packers at the end of the year. So were the Lions really that bad of a team? Or was Tua really just that lights out that game? And Tua was lights out that game. Go just look at the Gesicki touchdown at the back of the end zone. So,
Yeah, well, and I think throw Tua Tagovailoa in the helm of those teams with Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, Ricky Williams.
We're winning a Super Bowl. We're winning a Super Bowl.
And that's where, I always say this. I said Dan Marino was one of the main reasons I became a Dolphins fan, and Zach Thomas is the reason I became a fanatic. That team was Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor. Those were the days where I was up in my college room and I was cussing, throwing stuff down the hallway, and people were trying to study, and they'd come to my door dude, you got to cut it up. And I'm like, dude, don't even bring it in here. We're going to be rolling out on this floor fighting. This is the Dolphins.
But and Neal, these people, and that's why these people must not that's again. I go back to, are they really Dolphin fans? Because those were the days where we were in love with Ricky, because all we had to cheer for up until Ricky after Marino, and they were great. We love them as Dolphin fans. Remember, but guys like Chris Chambers and Randy McMichael, who were nothing anywhere else, but they were that's what we had to cheer for, because our defense was so set, but and we just couldn't get the quarterback right. And we had, you look at Chris Chambers and Randy McMichael, dude, Chris Chambers is a number 2 on another team, and so is probably Randy McMichael. But because they were given the spotlight, they emerged a little bit. I mean, Chris Chambers wasn't much when he went to the Chargers after us, I'm pretty sure.
And neither was McMichael. Didn't McMichael go to the Chargers too?
I don't remember, but they weren't anything after there, right?
Yeah, and Chambers was awesome here, but I agree with you.
Like,
if you remember, we would have James McKnight out there, and he was a boss, bubbling footballs. And we had what was his Dedrick Ward from the Jets, and we had Ray Lucas, and we couldn't figure out anything, man. And we had this defense, and someone just made this point, I think in the comments, which is really fair. I mean, the Ravens 2000 defense and the Ravens defense of that era was the best defense of football, but the longevity of those Dolphins teams was Thomas and Jay Taylor. They were the number 2.
Yeah,
I agree. The Titans with Kevin Carter, Javon Curse, and Keith Bullock, and those. But those defenses.
Well, I don't know. That Bucks defense was pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Bucks defense was bad and Brooks, but it was just crazy because I remember a game where we played the Jets on Sunday Night Football, and Ray Lucas was the starter. And I think we lost the game 9-6. And Chambers actually caught a touchdown in the back of the end zone. And it was before replay. And they said he stepped out. And we kind of lost. And we couldn't. And it was just it was hard to watch because how bad quarterback play was. Yeah. And then, I got so excited when it was the Dante Culpepper signing. Even though I wanted Breeze over him, I thought Culpepper would at least be something good here. And unbelievable that how bad that failed. And that's where I'm embracing to it because I think he is, no matter any way you cut it, he's a top 10 quarterback in football. And it's been a really, really long time since we could say that. We've tried every route. We traded Tannehill. We signed Trent Green and Dante Culpepper. We made a second round.
Remember when we gave the bag to David Boston because we thought he'd be a difference maker?
Right. AJ Feely. We traded a second round pick for AJ Feely. John Beck in the second round. I am tired.
We were going hard after Matt Flynn. Remember, thank God we weren't the Seahawks. Holy jeez.
Right. But so I'm embracing it. I'm excited, man. And I think good for Tua for getting better. I'm sorry I took us on that long tangent, but I think he needs to be appreciated here. I feel like it's over. He's our quarterback going into the next year, and I couldn't be more happy for that.
Rome says Anquan Bolden was passed over for Eddie Moore thanks to one.
I remember that, and I was
Dean says I'm taking Bob Greasy over Marino all day. I prefer a winner.
I was negative. I was at negative 11 years old when Greasy was doing his thing, so I can't really talk. But I'll say this: his son didn't do so well in Miami. That's
that was brutal when Brian came. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get into the combine. Let's go over some guys for Dolphins to watch, and I want to kick this off, and then I'll let you give your list. I'm going to give one name, and then I got my list, but I'll let you go your list first. But the name I got to get out ahead of the gate is who I'm about to say, bro. Who am I about to say?
Devin A-Chain.
Devin A-Chain. Yeah, I got him. The reason why I'm saying is because this guy's telling everyone he's going to break Ross's record, Justin Ross's 40 time. So let's go. This man's going to try and clock in early 4.2. So that man is worth watching because I'll say it over and over again. That speed out of our backfield would be I think he is Eckler, a little bit of Eckler and Mostert combined. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but I'll let you go. I just had to get that out because watch the fireworks when that kid takes the 40 and everyone likes watching the 40.
Well, and I did it kind of position by position and not just focus totally on Miami, but totally overall. Starting at quarterback, I mean, this guy is getting hot at the right time. He's got a lot of flaws, but Anthony Richardson is very polarizing. I told Reason today that a colleague that I used to work with at Pro Football Network had even told me that he has heard that he could go before Will Levis. So Anthony Richardson, I think he's going to run unbelievable. I think when he throws the ball at the combine, it's going to be mesmerizing. And I think that guy's going to I think he's going to make himself a lot of money. With that said, I think he's got a lot of flaws, and you better not anticipate him being your day one starter. Running back, I mean, Devin A-Chain, I think, is the guy that everyone wants to see. He's probably one of the best names. He's my 35th overall player on my draft board. I think he's a game changer. I would love him for Miami. Another guy that I want to see is Dwayne McBride. I think he's a beast. I think he's so underrated. And then another guy that I really like, and I know that Alf and the 3R guys like him, is Israel and I'm not good at saying this.
Don't butcher from Pitt. Yeah, from Pitt.
Israel Abinaconda, who I think is a guy
Beast.
who's just could be an absolute steal. And I am of the mindset that we're going to sign a running back who I think is going to be Raheem Mostert and draft a running back in the 3rd round. I think obviously Bijan and Jameer are going to be gone. Do one of these guys fall to the 3rd round? Do the Dolphins? Because I have a hard time thinking they're going to take a running back in the 2nd round personally. We'll get there in another day. Receivers, a guy that I love who went to my alma mater is Raheem Jarrett from Maryland. And him coming out kind of reminds me of Stephon Diggs coming out when Diggs fell to the 5th round and the Vikings got him. Raheem Jarrett, like in the offense this year, and we have obviously Tua's brother as the starter there, and the receiving core around him was Dante Demas, who's a guy who's like a 5th round prospect, and another guy named Jacob Copeland, who's going to be a draftable player, probably a last round type of guy. But Raheem Jarrett is special, and I think he's going to be one of the biggest deals in the draft, and I really want to see what he runs. There's a guy named Tyler Scott from Cincinnati who might be one of the fastest receivers in this draft. He's a total burner. I want to see what he does. And then, I want to see Jackson Smith in the jig book because, he definitely is not going to run the fastest 40, but if he runs a good time, I think he cements himself. I still think personally he's probably the best overall receiver in this class. He might not have those measurables, but like he's just a good football player when you put the tape. He reminds me a lot of like Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out last year, where St. Brown didn't have all this elite athleticism, right? But look what he did in Detroit this year. And I'll end up on the offense with tight ends because I want to see the strength, them on the bench press with Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave. I know they're athletic guys that catch the ball, but like I don't want another Mike Gesicki. I want a guy that can move some people in the running game. I think Luke Musgrave is going to be stronger than Kincaid. I don't have a guy like Darnell Washington on here because I know that he's probably going to toss it up a lot. He's a beast. He's a freak of an athlete. But I've kind of really come to Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave being guys that I can see Miami being interested in if they're there in round 2. So I want to make sure that they can be 3-down players and not the next Mike Gesicki, if that makes sense. And then the offensive line, like I don't really care about the linemen that much at the combine because I really like watching them in the trenches and play. And I actually go more off of the stock that we saw at the Senior Bowl. I like to see how they battle other players in the trenches, but it's always going to be fun to see who can put up,
What do you think about Luke Whippler out of Ohio State?
I like him. And the move I think the Dolphins should make to fix this offensive line, because I don't think they're spending big on offensive line. I've told you that, I've heard that they're going to bring Eric Fisher back, and they still somehow, some shape, some way believe in Austin Jackson. It's crazy. I hope that what I'm hearing is wrong there, but I think you get a pure center and kick Connor Williams over to left guard. And I know that Williams had a good year at center, but look, that snapping didn't improve all year. And I think he could give you similar play at left guard than he did at center. Get a pure center. I like Whippler a lot. I like the kid from TCO, Steve Avila. I think that's how you say his name. I think he's a really big, strong, kind of mauler. He can play guard and center. He's got some versatility. It's honestly, a pretty strong interior offensive line class. There's, Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame's a guy. He's a battle-tested guy. He's got a lot of snaps there.
John Michael Schmitz.
There's the guy, like, if I had to take a guy in round 2, I think
if he's there, you run to that. Yeah.
Because I think he's going to be a guy he might not be as high on my board as a guy like Tyler Linderbaum was last year, but he's not far off.
Yeah, he's right there. I agree. He's right there with Linderbaum and Creed. I think he's just right under them. I'm surprised. I'll let you keep going, but I'm surprised. I didn't hear Jalen Hyatt or Zay Flowers when you were mentioning wide receiver, because Zay Flowers is starting to get out of Boston College, is starting to get a lot of notoriety. I've noticed over the last couple weeks and stuff. I'm starting to see his name a lot more than I've seen recently. Well, over the whole season, really. So I'm surprised you didn't name them. But yeah, all right, keep going. Let's hear.
I think Zay Flowers is a stud. I like Zay a lot. I actually am not as high on Jalen Hyatt. I think he's going to run an unreal 40. He does nothing impresses me not at all with the ball in his hands after the catch, though. I mean, he's a lean dude. He doesn't break any tackles. I mean, he's just a fast dude that can run 9 routes. He's got some nuances a route runner. There's no doubt. I'm just not as high on him as other people. Another guy that I'm not a big fan of that a lot of people love is Rashee Rice from SMU. He did awesome against, small school competition. I don't know how well he played. He struggled against Cincinnati, and that was one of the games that, was a kind of a spotlight game for him. He's not going to run an outrageous 40 time, but on the defensive line, a guy that I like a lot is a guy from Coastal Carolina named Jared Clark. He's a big dude. He's like a pure nose tackle. And I'm interested to see what Miami does, because I think, we have a really good rotation on the defensive line, but if we don't bring Jenkins back, we don't have a pure nose. And, I like Raekwon Davis. He's on the last year of his deal. He's underwhelmed me since we drafted him. I expected a lot more, and I don't know if he's a pure nose. I think he's more of a 5-tech, actually. So I think a guy like Jared Clark, who's a big nose, could be really vital to throw in the middle of our defense. I like the linebackers a lot. My favorite player for the Dolphins is Jack Campbell. Unfortunately, I think his name's getting really hot, and he might not be there at 51. But 3 names that I really like. First is Dorian Williams from Tulane. I think he could be a really good football player. I want to see what he runs. I want to see what he puts up. But I'm a big fan of his. I think Ivan Pace Jr. from Cincinnati is a guy that's going to really show well at this combine. He's a guy that has a lot of versatility and that I think Vic Fangio would like a lot. And then I know a guy that you like, and I have this guy just because I know he's going to be an outrageous athlete, and it's Owen Pepo from Auburn.
Yep.
He's a gold standard of athletes. So I just want to see his traits. I don't know. I think with him, he's a player more like Shannon Tindall, meaning that he's going to need some development and some time. But I want to see his athleticism, because I think he has a chance to probably be the best linebacker at the position. And then, I'll say this one. This is an easy one, but Trenton Simpson, because if that guy's in striking distance for Miami, and say he's there at pick 40, and we have pick 51, and we have to get rid of a pick from next year's draft and move up to get him. Go get your guy. If that's Jack Campbell, go get your guy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And all I know in some DBs, Deontay Banks is a guy from Maryland that I've watched a lot. I love him. I think that he is a awesome, awesome corner, man. And I think he's got a chance to be there at 51. I want to see what he runs. I want to see what Emmanuel Forbes runs. Emmanuel Forbes had 8 interceptions returned for a touchdown in his collegiate career, man.
State. Yeah.
If he breaks 4.5, he gets his name in first round consideration, in my opinion. And then, dude, our guy, and I sent you a text today that I've heard people are telling me that Keely Ringo is going to be there in the second round. And that's another example to me. If that guy's there at pick 40 and you have to move up, go get Keely Ringo. I have Keely Ringo as the best corner in this draft, and that's the minority, but I love him. And I know he had a rough game against Ohio State. And you know what? You know why we talk about that rough game so much? Because that's the only rough game he had.
For real.
Is a good player, man. The other team tries to. People can have bad games. Dan Marino had bad games. Tom Brady's had bad games. It doesn't matter who you are. You're not immune to having a bad game. But I am a big fan of Keely Ringo. I want to see him show up at the combine, or maybe not, so that he falls in our lap. But those are the guys I have.
What do you think? What do you think Christian Gonzalez runs? He could be like a low 4.3, eh?
And I think he's a top 10 pick. I think him and Devin Weatherspoon are both going to be top 10 picks when
from Illinois studs.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'll be in Disney World chasing kids around next week. But when they're passed out at night, I'll be on definitely on NFL Network, kind of watching the late night replays. Probably getting my drink on, watching a lot of the combine. So I'm excited for it.
Any safeties? Because I know Brian Branch, Jordan Battle out of Alabama. I think a really good sleeper is that kid out of Louisville, Terrell Clark. I think he's a pretty decent sleeper too. What are your thoughts of the safety class?
Sidney Brown from Illinois is the guy.
I got someone in my chat. I forget who absolutely loves Sidney Brown.
I love him. I think I think he's a good pick at 51. That's how high I am on him.
What do you think of Antonio Johnson and Christopher Smith?
Yeah, I like Chris Smith a lot for our defense.
from Georgia.
Antonio Johnson is a good football player. He's played
Length for days, eh?
He kind of a little bit reminds me of Byron Jones, to be honest, where he could kind of has a little bit of versatility to play corner and safety. He's got good length. I don't think he'll be there when he gets there because I think on most people's boards he's the second safety. Brian Branch, man. Brian Branch is a guy that, like, I hate to say it, keep an eye on the New England Patriots at 14. That guy does everything that Bill Belichick likes. Swiss Army knife of the defensive backfield. He can play nickel. He can play outside in the boundary. He can play free safety. I mean, he does everything really, really well. Man, Brian Branch is an awesome football player.
Yeah,
he's awesome. He's in my top 15 overall.
Yeah. Man, the combine, I love the combine. I'm so excited it's coming up.
Me too.
Right
I heard
around the corner.
Indianapolis after this year, though, which would be awful.
That would be terrible. Everyone who I've talked to that goes down there says they love it there.
St. Elmo's is awesome. I went to one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you ride into town listening to St. Elmo's Fire or what? No?
I honestly was starstruck there, to be honest, man. It was because I'm a fan.
Goes down there every year, my buddy Kevin Dern.
Oh, yeah.
He goes down there every year. He meets Travis Wingfield down there. I think he's going down there next week. And last year, who did he meet? A Wink. He ran into Wink at the bar, and Wink told him, like, man, I'd love to coach that defense out there.
Well, see, I'm lucky, man. I live 8 miles from the godfather of the draft, Mel Kiper, and I went to his alma mater. So I get to see you get to see him around town, and
that's awesome.
But I Mel's the man. I think he still does a great job. He doesn't go down to the combine anymore, though. He kind of stays local. But
so let's talk about this. So before we get to the draft, what unit or position do you identify as the first priority? Because to me, we got to get this linebacker thing figured out, and I know you
free agency.
I think that should be our first priority.
Yeah.
And I think we should double
the guy they should get just got released. That's my opinion.
So you're Bobby. You think you're okay. So let's talk about if we get
Bobby Wagner is the best linebacker in football still, even over Roquan Smith or Fred Warner. Yeah. I love Bobby Wagner.
Because didn't he have last year? He had 6 sacks, like 120 plus tackles and 2 picks or something.
Right. And the way I look at it, right, like, because I think the Dolphins are going to get a big name linebacker. I think that's where they're going to spend. And I think that Vic Fangio is going to want, and I include TJ Edwards as a big name.
I think they're going to double dip. I think they're going to sign one, and I think they're going to draft too.
Right. I think I could see something where they do that for sure. I think they will do that. I have a feeling Jerome Baker's back, though. I've changed my stance there. I think it's him and Shannon Tindall. I think they're even going to bring Landon Roberts back on a sweetheart type of deal for 1 year. And then I think they're going to sign a free agent and they're going to draft someone. And, look, the 3 big names, I like Levante David and Bobby Wagner way more than Tremaine Edwards. And I might be in the minority, but I've heard $16 to $18 million a year for Tremaine Edmonds.
Well, let's talk about, hold on, because I wanted to ask you that.
Yep.
If we're going to go 2 guys long in the tooth, who are you taking, Bobby or Levante?
I want Bobby Wagner.
Because really, I wouldn't be disappointed with either one. I think they're pretty much the same level. Levante's still a 140 tackle guy, 124 tackle guy.
I didn't even know that. Levante David's a year older than Bobby Wagner. Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But have you seen, did you look at Levante's production this year?
Yeah, no. I love Levante.
They're literally just almost the same player, except Bobby is, like you said, a year younger.
Well, so my thing, because I do think Tremaine Edmonds is a good football player. The reason I don't love him at $16 to $18 million, I think he has 6.5 career sacks and 5 career picks in 5 years. There's not enough impact plays there for me for that price tag, right? I think you're going to get Bobby Wagner or Levante David for $6 million cheaper. They're going to be veteran leaders. And I think having a guy like Vic Fangio and a needed linebacker makes it so attractive for one of those guys. And I don't remember it well, but I do think that I know that Bobby Wagner is between the Ravens and the Rams, but I thought that the Dolphins did inquire about Bobby Wagner. I could totally be wrong.
I don't remember.
He's still a good player. They're both, so him or Levante, I think you go get one of those guys and you draft someone. Is Bobby Wagner the best linebacker of this generation? Like, I know he's 32, but if we need him for 2 or 3 more years, say, he signed a 5-year, $55 million deal with the Rams, right? So say it's 3 years, 36 to get him here. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Why did they get rid? Was it to purely cap?
Well, I think it looked like from the article that I saw that it was a mutual decision and that Wagner initiated it because the Rams are so far off of winning that he wants to win.
So that tells us more to the story. He's only looking at going to contenders right now.
And we're one.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's a 9-time All-Pro, man.
He's a stud, bro.
I mean, like so I'm looking at my free agent list right now. And my number 1 free agent is Lamar Jackson. Like, he's a 26-year-old quarterback. He's going to be tagged, so it doesn't matter. My number 2 is Orlando Brown, but I have Orlando Brown as my number 2 as a right tackle. So, like, if he would take left tackle money and play right tackle, I would love a guy like Orlando Brown. But my number 3 overall player is Bobby Wagner. I just think Bobby Wagner is that good. I think he's a game changer. I think he's.
I didn't even put Orlando Brown on my free agent target list coming out because I don't think he wants to switch to right tackle.
No,
he wants the left tackle money, right?
This is more of an overall big board for.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just telling people, like, when you don't see Orlando Brown on my list, that's why, because I think he wants to be a left tackle.
And he's going to be tagged. So when you look at the top, I heard Deron Payne's going to get tagged today. Orlando Brown's going to get tagged. Lamar Jackson. The cool thing about Bobby Wagner, though, is if you sign him, he doesn't go against your compensatory formula. So you sign a guy like him, right? And you lose Gesicki, and say you get a 4th rounder in the compensatory formula for a guy like Mike Gesicki. Signing Bobby Wagner has no impact on that because he was just released from the Rams. He's not he wasn't an unrestricted free agent to come into the season. So, like, if you sign Tremaine Edmonds, that would probably even offset of any pick you would get for Gesicki. Right.
Wow.
So that's why I really like Bobby Wagner a lot. And then I'll say another thing, and just talking out loud, and I tweeted this week. The Ravens are getting calls about Patrick Queen. He's kind of been a disappointment, but he played really well when Roquan Smith came around. He's got a ton of athleticism. He's a young dude. Like, the Ravens are going to be cap-strapped when they give this exclusive tag to Lamar. Depending on the price tag, man, like, I would do something where I signed Bobby Wagner and maybe I trade a 3rd-round pick for Patrick Queen and say, hey, I like how you played next to Roquan. You're going to play again next to a better player now, and Bobby. And you do that, man, and our linebacker core's fixed, right? Like,
so let's talk about this. Then how do you see them keeping Ogbah's money? Because that's the word coming out right now, affecting all this. Because, it makes more sense when you talk about a Wagner or a Levante David, because it'll be cheaper than that big ticket item. And Ogbah if you're keeping Ogbah on the roster with his hit, what are you doing? Are you restructuring him because I'm restructure him?
Yeah, the 3 guys I'm going to restructure are going to be Tyreek, Bradley Chubb, and Ogbah, and I'm going to leave Terron Armstead as he is. That's what I'm going to do. And I think it would be 19 for Tyreek, 14.7 for Chubb, and 9.3, I want to say, for Ogbah, right? So if you do the math there, 24, 34, you just save $43 million in cap space. So I think that's what you do.
And we're 26 over when you do that, right? We're about 26, 25 over when you do that because we're 16 under the cap, right?
Yeah, so we'd free about 25. You probably could sign Wagner. You're going to cut Byron Jones and save that 13.6 after June 1st, right? I'm extending Wilkins and Connor Williams to free another probably 10 between those two. And then, honestly, if you go get a Bobby Wagner and you sign one more quality free agent, I actually don't think you need to buy too many more groceries.
Does that worry you that me and you haven't heard any rumblings from anyone we know about a Connor Williams extension, and there's only 1 year left? And the scary thing for me, Neal, they've told us what they think of Dieter. We don't even have a backup in-house right now, Neal.
Right. And that's what's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of low-budget signings for the Dolphins.
Yeah, to fill out.
Like Nick Needham's, I think is going to be a guy brought back on the cheap. I looked the other. I think Melvin Ingram could come back for something like $4 to $5 million a year.
I agreed. Yeah.
They might tender a guy like Elijah Campbell. Salvin Ahmed. Like they could tender those guys. They might get Landon Roberts back on a 1-year, $2 million deal. Same thing for Raheem Mostert. I think they're going to bring a lot of those guys back, add a linebacker, and then one more starting quality player. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be on the offensive line. Something tells me that they're going to be in the market for an upgraded safety. That's what I think. I think they're going to look at safety and who I want them to get. I know there's a lot of Jordan Poyer fans. I don't think you can get a Bobby Wagner and a Poyer.
I'm paying Jesse Bates if I'm going after Poyer. Are you kidding me?
I want Adrian Amos because he also went to my alma mater. I fought him really closely at Penn State. My boys coached him here in high school and talked high raise on him. He went to Chicago and really carved out a nice niche for himself. I think Adrian Amos would be a really nice player to add to
Bro,
this
Jay
team.
Morrison from The Athletic before it went live wrote that Jesse Bates is as good as gone. He is expected to hit free agency.
Well, the Bengals are – well, the Bengals – look, don't sleep on them trading T. Higgins. And
we've been hearing that all season, right?
They're going to pay Joe Burrow, and their owner is the cheapest dude in the NFL. So
can I ask you? Let me ask you this: would you be happy if, hypothetical, they give Bobby like 10, and then they go get a guy like Von Bell for like 8?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be? I'd love that. Like, I know it's not as sexy as everyone thinks at safety, but listen, unless you're trading for a Ramsey,
I think
that allows you to keep Brandon Jones up there because now you just split the field in half with X and Jalen Ramsey. Unless you're doing something like that, I would love Von Bell up there with Javon Holland and Wagner or Levante David in the middle there at like 10 million. I think that's very appealing.
I actually think it is kind of sexy, to be honest, man. I think Von Bell is a hell of a football player.
So do I. Slept on.
And if you made those two moves and you brought back those low 1-year deal Dolphins, and we've seen the Dolphins do a lot of those 1-year deals before, right? If you did that and headed to the draft, right? Like because look, I'm looking at my board now. Here's what I think our biggest needs are. Linebacker, I wrote DB because I think either it's a corner or a safety.
Yeah.
I have tight end because I think we need to add a good tight end. And a guy that I like, honestly, who I don't think would cost a lot, is either Hayden Hurst out of Cincinnati or Foster Moreau from the Raiders.
Yeah.
And then I still think getting one quality offensive lineman is a need. I don't think the Dolphins think that, unfortunately. So if you get a linebacker and a DB in free agency, then you can.
So you have tight end as more of a need than running back right now when we have none under contract.
Well, see, I guess I'm assuming that they're going to get a running back in the draft. I'm assuming that they're going to take one in the 3rd round.
Because I don't get everyone's and this is no shot at you. I see it more on Twitter. I don't get everyone's obsession with taking a tight end with that 51st pick. I just don't see it. Like, we need the linebacker core needs to fix that secondary needs to be tweaked. The offensive line we need depth and upgrades either or on the offensive line first. We don't have a running back under contract. Like, tight end falls way down the list for me. I don't know. That's just me though.
Well, I think, the one thing about tight ends, when you look about the league, right? Like Travis Kelce, correct me if I'm wrong, was he a 3rd round pick? George Kittle was a 5th round pick. Mark Andrews was a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
You don't like, I personally think 4 tight ends are going in the top 40 picks. Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, Dalton Kincaid, and Darnell Washington. I think they all are going to go in the top 40 picks. So I don't think there's going to be a player of the caliber that we want there anyway. And I kind of think it does suck we don't have a 4th or a 5th rounder, but keep an eye on a trade, right? Like, I could see the Dolphins doing something to get another pick there in the 3rd round. And with that said, like, I do.
And what about Tanner Connor? Ron makes the point. What about they've invested in Tanner Connor, though, not us.
They gave him 2 chances, man, and he didn't do. I get it, and then Hunter Long, I know. I think they need another tight end. I think Durham Smythe's a really good number 2.
I like your Foster Moreau idea because I think he'd be cheap, but I think you could get super value out of that contract because I think he would. I think he's a guy that would outperform the cheap contract you give him because he's not under Darren Waller anymore.
Right, and he caught a lot of touchdowns for the Raiders.
Yeah, he's a good player, bro. He's a quiet, good player.
But I think, to kind of what we're saying, they're probably going to make one splash signing. I'll say this too because it's going to come up, right? It's been a long time since we've seen the caliber of running back that's going to be available. When you think about Josh Jacobs, potentially Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley looks like he could be out. Like, I could see Miami making a move there. I personally wouldn't do it unless it was Josh Jacobs for me because he's 26, and I think he's got a lot of mileage left on him. Like, I love Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley is actually a better player than Josh Jacobs, but that injury history scares the shit out of me.
With how much you're gonna have to pay him.
But I do think that the Dolphins could be interested. I think Jacobs going to get franchise tagged. I don't think the Vikings are going to end up trading Dalvin Cook. And I think the Giants are going to franchise tag Saquon and try to figure out what they can do with Daniel Jones. Like, I think when it's all said and done, the good news is I think the Dolphins can definitely score. There's 20 running backs I like in this draft. A combo of a good rookie and Mostert, really, I think it's the job done.
I love it.
And then I just saw a name in the chat that I wouldn't be. Kareem Hunt might be out there too.
All day. Oh, he will be out there.
And
then talk about it. And he's another guy with not a lot of tread on the tires.
Yep.
Right? Because of his usage. Man, I can't wait. I was talking to EM Dolphin fan today, Neal, and we were laughing and talking about Watson's contract. And I said, bro, I can't wait till it forces Nick Chubb out. And I hope we're in a position where we can just jump all over a guy like Nick Chubb for like a year or two and just run him. Oh my God.
Well, it's also a ripple effect. And everyone, like, here's what I'll say about the Browns though. Did they overpay for Deshaun Watson and do the worst contract in NFL history? Yes. But you know what else they might have done is collateral damage? They might have chased Lamar Jackson out of Baltimore too. And because he's Lamar Jackson. I don't know if anyone read the report today. He is not selling for less guaranteed money than Deshaun Watson. And my question is,
200 to 300. Yeah, I heard it's like 250 to 300 million he wants.
Right. So it's crazy, man.
It is nuts, man. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, bro?
No, man. Everything's good on my end. Just another good show, brother, and Finn's up, man. I'm pumped, though.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks because this man will be in Orlando next week with Mickey Mouse ears on and doing his thing, bro. Always a good show, man. Always appreciate chopping it up with you. Over 420 people in the chat today. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. I'm going to be dropping a new episode of 3 Takes Thursday on the Patreon tonight. And we're going to talk about players who want to come here and all of that stuff. So we're going to have a little info inside that 3 Takes Thursday tonight. Expect that later tonight on the Patreon. Patreon.com/Phinside the NFL. If you'd like to join up, it's as little as $20 for the year or $2 for $2 a month. So check it out. Listen, I appreciate each and every one of you. Neal, always a pleasure. Always a good conversation, man. So guys, we will see all of y'all not next week, but the week after when we get back here. Enjoy your vacation, Neal. Come back with a nice tan. And until next time, as always, everyone, stay healthy, happy, safe, and blessed. And Fins up all day, every day.